I'm going to talk about the book Pride and Prejudice. The story starts when a rich man moved to the neighborhood, Mr. Bingley. Then Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet considered a good man to marry with one of his 5 daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. The story has an establishment in England. The daughters and Mrs. Bennet want to Mr. Bennet go to visit Mr. Bingley, but they don't go because they want to bother his family. Finally, they visit, but they don't tell to anyone. Then in the city, there was a ball. In there, the ladies Bennet know Mr. Bingley, his sister, and his friend, Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy was judged like the most proud and unpleasant man in the world. Mr. Bingley danced with so many different ladies, but they danced with Jane twice. All the people think that Mr. Bingley has some attraction to Jane. After that, Jane received a letter where a sister of Mr. Bennet invited her to a dinner, but in the trouble they get sick because it's raining. For this unfortunate case, they stayed in house of Mr. Bingley, and they have all the attention of him. Darcy started to see Elizabeth with different eyes. Then the two sisters came back to their house. After these events, Mr. Collins, the distant cousin, arrived to the house. Mr. Collins started to seem attracted for Jane and Elizabeth. After the ball, Mr. Collins proposed marriage to Elizabeth, but she denied this proposal. Mr. Bingley left the city without telling Jane. Only a letter from the sister of Mr. Bennet saying that Mr. Bennet was going to marry with Georgina Darcy. Elizabeth started to have some feelings with him, but he's very materialistic, and they get in love of Miss King, a rich lady. Mr. Darcy constantly visits Elizabeth. Mr. Darcy declares his love, but he says the different social classes between Elizabeth and Darcy, and she gets annoyed and they reject his proposal. Then the next day, Darcy gives a letter to Elizabeth telling all the truth. Elizabeth don't believe the gentle of treatment of Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy helped the family Bennet to find his daughter because he is in love of Elizabeth. Finally, Mr. Bingley proposed marriage to Jane, and his family was very happy. And the end, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth get married in spite of all the drawbacks that they have, and they live very happy of all his life.